A billion souls burn each day, and yet his hunger does not dim. They say to die for him is salvation. But when the knife nears the throat, faith trembles, and the silence of eternity is deafening. There are chambers deep beneath the Imperial, palace where no light is welcome. The walls are carved from stone older than empires, older than memory, layered with the soot of incense burned without pause for 10,000 years. In these halls, silence is not absence. Silence has weight, pressing against the lungs, clawing at the throat, leaving every whisper sounding like a blasphemy. It is here that the chosen sit, thousands of psykers drawn from every corner of the galaxy, rest on cold stone benches. They wait not for trial, nor for judgment, but for a death sanctified by ritual. Their faces blur into one another, gaunt from travel, hollow-eyed from visions, lips cracked from reciting litanies taught by priests who will never follow them into the fire. Some rock back and forth, muttering half-remembered hymns. Others sit rigid, trying to pretend that stillness is strength. But all of them know what lies ahead, the slow, methodical dismantling of their very selves. The air tastes of rust and sanctified oil, with the faint sweetness of burning incense layered. Above it all, that incense is thick, cloying, a perfume meant to mask the scent of human fear and sweat. Yet fear lingers, it always does. One young man, barely more than a boy, clutches something in his fist. His knuckles whiten as he presses the object against his palm, a charm carved from rough wood, a bird crudely shaped, given to him by a mother whose face is already fading from memory. The wood is worn smooth, polished not by craft, but by years of nervous fingers rubbing it. He keeps it hidden inside his sleeve, careful that no priest sees, for sentimentality is weakness, and weakness is heresy. But here, at the edge of oblivion, it is all he has. Faith demands sacrifice. But does sacrifice demand faith? This question festers in the silence of the chamber. The ecclesiarchy would condemn such doubt as poison, yet every trembling lip, every unblinking stare, whispers the same truth. Belief falters when the end comes close. Even the most pious hesitate when faced with the knife. A priest enters, robes heavy with wax-sealed prayers. His voice rises, trembling and thunderous all at once. Blessed are those who give their souls to him who sits eternal. For through their fire, humanity endures. But chant echoes, rolling over stone, swallowed by the stillness of the chamber. It does not comfort. It binds, one by one. The chosen bow their heads, not in peace, but in surrender. For what choice is there? Refusal is impossible. The Imperium has no mercy for the unwilling. A chain clinks as one prisoner moves, the sound sharp as a blade in the suffocating air. The boy with the wooden bird presses it harder into his palm. Splinters break the skin. He does not cry out. The blood stains the charm, seeping into the grain, sealing memory with pain. The emperor requires blood, and faith alone cannot quench his hunger. This is not a single death, not a single sacrifice. It is a fraction of the tithe demanded each dawn. Their end is one thread in a tapestry woven from agony and devotion, a pattern stretched across the entire galaxy. Above, unseen, the Astronomican burns, the great psychic beacon that guides ships across the nightmare of the warp. Its light is steady, eternal, but its fuel is flesh, and its cost is measured in souls. The silence of the chamber deepens. The boy closes his eyes. He imagines the sound of gulls by a shoreline, though he has never seen an ocean. He imagines the warmth of sunlight through clouds, though terraced skies are forever ash. Memory bends into fantasy, and fantasy is all he has left. Then the doors open, and the line begins to move. One by one they rise, wooden charms and whispered hymns clutched against their chests. The chamber empties slowly, like blood draining from a wound, and still the silence follows. Faith is a fire, but fire devours the hand that feeds it. As the line marches deeper, the perspective widens. This is no isolated rite. It is a single chamber among countless thousands. A single day among 10,000 years of days. For the emperor to shine, humanity must bleed. The boy with the wooden charm disappears into the darkness. And with him, so too does the fragile illusion that sacrifice is noble. There's a throne. On Terra older than memory, older than nations, older even than the Imperium itself. It is not a seat of glory, though it gleams with gold. It is not a symbol of triumph, though it towers higher than mountains. It is a machine of hunger. The golden throne, a fortress of bone, iron, and sorcery, does not rest. It devours. It is said that when the emperor was shattered upon that throne 10,000 years ago, the galaxy itself trembled. His body, broken yet immortal, was bound into that device by the hands of priests and artisans who scarcely understood the thing they built. From that day to this, humanity has endured not because of armies or fleets or faith alone, but because the throne consumes. The Astronomican burns as its beacon, a psychic light cast across the Imperium. It pierces the madness of the warp, guiding ships as a lighthouse guides desperate sailors. Without it, the galaxy would collapse into silence, each world stranded. In a sea of nightmares, with it, men and women may travel, trade, wage war and die for an empire that still breathes. But light requires fuel, and fuel for the throne is the human soul. Every day, thousands of psykers, humans cursed with the gift of psychic power, are fed into its mechanisms. They are not burned with fire, nor slain by blade. Their essence is unraveled, their thoughts stripped thread by thread, their spirits consumed as sustenance. They are sacrifices not of blood, but of identity. Their deaths are not ends. They are transfigurations into silence, and the Imperium records each one. In the endless scriptoriums of Terra, the administratum tallies these. Deaths with a precision colder than steel. Great ledgers, the size of cathedral doors, are filled with names, birth worlds, and dates of consumption. Quills scratch across parchment, dipped into ink brewed from chemicals that stink of oil and dust. No name is honored. No life is remembered. Each line is another tithe, written with the same detachment as grain shipments or taxation. A scribe sits hunched over one such ledger. His robe is plain, patched more times than he can count. The ink pot beside him is half empty, its rim crusted black from years of use. He writes carefully, fearful of spilling a single drop onto the page. Stains mean reprimands, and reprimands mean demotion. And here, in the palace, demotion means a descent into levels where no one returns. His hand trembles as he scratches out the name of a woman he never met, a soul already consumed. He wonders if his own name will one day be written in the same ledger. Perhaps it already is. This is how the Imperium survives, not with courage, but with bureaucracy, not with glory, but with paperwork. Priests chant hymns to sanctify slaughter. Tech priests monitor the machines that drain life like water from a cistern. Administrators record the tally. And all the while, the golden throne hums, eternal, insatiable. The emperor sits upon a corpse throne, and mankind kneels upon its own grave. There are those who argue this is mercy. That to be consumed by the throne is to serve the emperor directly, to ensure the survival of humanity entire. What greater honor can there be than to feed the beacon that lights the galaxy? But honor tastes thin when measured against agony. The screams of the sacrifice never reach the surface. Terra itself remains ignorant of the depths. Hive workers labor in their millions, never knowing that the light above them is fed by souls beneath. Nobles feast in spire palaces, drinking wines older than dynasties. Their toast offered to a god who dines upon the poor. Knowledge is restricted. Truth is strangled. The machine endures because most cannot see its teeth. The boy with the wooden charm, the mother's trinket clutched in secret, his name is another line. Another number, another debt paid to keep the beacon aflame. His suffering is invisible, even in the moment of its happening. An empire built on silence must kill the sound of truth. Yet the silence is not perfect. Whispers travel with the black ships, the massive vessels that scour the galaxy for psykers to fuel the throne. Worlds tremble at their arrival. Families hide children in basements, priests thunder about duty, and rumors spread like disease. The people know enough to fear, but not enough to understand. And perhaps that ignorance is the only mercy they will ever know. The scribe dips his pen again. His hand pauses. For a moment, he imagines writing his own name across the page, just to see how it looks, just to know the shape of his end. Then, with a sigh, he lowers the quill and continues. The ink dries quickly, as names become dust. The chamber of sacrifices echoes with hymns. The halls of the administratum echo with quills. The throne echoes with hunger. 3 sounds, 1 machine. 3 silences, 1 death. And so the galaxy turns not upon hope, but upon the bones of those who never lived long enough to be remembered. The black ships arrive without herald, yet their shadow is more feared than invasion. For when they come, they do not seek conquest. They seek harvest. They appear above a world like cathedral spires cast adrift in void, vast vessels of iron. In sanctity, their hulls etched with wards against the warp. No banners unfurl, no declarations are made. Their silence is their announcement. Entire hives hold their breath when their silhouettes blot the stars. Mothers pull children close. Priests thunder about duty. And in the silence between sermons, men whisper of disappearances, of chosen ones taken and never seen again. The hunt is methodical. The black ships descend not with armies, but with quiet processions of robed officials and sanctioned psykers whose eyes glow faintly with leashed power. They sift through the population with ritual precision, their instruments attuned to the flickers of psychic resonance that betray the cursed and the gifted. It is not selection. It is culling. And when the chosen are found, chains follow. Inside, the belly of the ship, the light never warms. Corridors are lit by flickering lumens, their glow reflected in polished steel and sealed bulkheads. The air is dry, recycled until every breath tastes of rust. Prisoners are herded into cramped cells, dozens to a chamber scarcely large enough for half that number. The doors close with mechanical finality, locking away lives that no longer belong to themselves. The hum begins then, the low, unceasing thrum of the null field's psychic dampeners that suppress thought and suffocate will. It is a sound that is more felt and heard, a vibration in the skull, a weight behind the eyes. It renders the gifted powerless, stripping away the very thing that defined them. For many is the first death. Some collapse into prayer, whispering half-remembered litanies to the emperor. Others claw at the steel walls until their nails break, desperate to find a seam, a weakness, any crack in their cage. A few sit silent, staring at nothing, their minds already fleeing to escape the gnawing hum. Hope dies quickly in the dark. In one corner, a prisoner drags a piece of broken metal across the wall. Each scrape leaves a shallow mark. Slowly, painstakingly, they etch their name into the steel. The letters are crooked, uneven, but they are proof. I was here. I existed. The act is not rebellion, only desperation. They know the ship will erase them, but the wall may remember. Nearby, a woman hums to herself in the darkness. A lullaby, soft and trembling, the kind once sung to infants in the cradle. Her voice quavers, yet she repeats the tune each night, as though the sound might ward away the whispers that claw at the mind. For in the dark, even with Nullfield's humming, the warp stirs, its voices slip through cracks, murmurs of madness that curl like smoke in the ears of the vulnerable. The lullaby is her shield, fragile but hers. Days bleed into weeks. The black ship does not speak of its destination. There are no windows, only steel. Meals come as tasteless gray paste, delivered. Through slits in the doors, a substance that fills the stomach but carries no memory of flavor. Time unravels without markers. Prisoners forget how many sleeps have passed, how many hymns have been whispered, how many names carved into walls. Occasionally, the silence shatters. Guards enter, faceless beneath blank helmets, dragging a prisoner. away. Sometimes they return, broken and hollow-eyed, lips moving without sound. More often, they do not return at all. And so the prisoners learn the truth. The journey itself is part of the sacrifice. It is not merely bodies the Imperium requires, but the wearing down of spirit, the stripping away of identity until only obedience remains. To serve the Emperor is to first lose the self. One man, once a merchant on a hive world, clings to a scrap of parchment hidden in his boot. On it, the faint outline of a child's drawing. A house, a stick figure family, and a sun smiling down from above. He unfolds it each night, tracing the faded lines with trembling fingers. In this, he remembers warmth. He remembers a life before. Chains. The paper tears further with each handling, but he cannot let it go. Better it disintegrates in his hands than he forgets it ever existed. The black ship devours all such fragments of humanity, slowly, inexorably. It is a waiting room for the pyre, a cathedral of silence where prayers are swallowed and memories decay. When at last the journey ends, there is no announcement. Only a shift in the gravity, a subtle lurch of machinery. Doors grind open. Chains clatter, guards bark commands. Prisoners stumble forward, their eyes blinking against the sudden flood of lumen light. And then they see it. Through narrow slits in the docking bay, Terra fills the sky. A planet veiled in storm and cloud, its continents drowned beneath endless hives, its air choked with the smoke of uncountable industries. The throne world, the end of every road. Some collapse in awe. Others weep. A few scream until their voices break. All know, instinctively, there is no return from this place. Faith and machinery do not oppose each other in the Imperium. They are welded together, forged in blood, bound by necessity. Here, beneath the Imperial palace, they become indistinguishable, a single engine that runs on sacrifice. The sacrificial halls stretch beneath the throne world, like veins of gold and bone. Their ceilings vanish into shadow, hung with censers that swing on rusted chains, each spilling clouds of incense, so thick they form a choking fog. Through the haze glimmer lumen fires, 1,000 candles burning beside hololithic displays and rune-etched consoles. The smell is a mingling of sanctity and industry, perfumed oils masking the acrid tang of ozone, blood, and sacred machinery. Walls of polished marble are inlaid with reliquaries of saints, their skulls sealed in crystal, their bones forming macabre mosaics that gleam in candlelight. Between these holy relics, the brass limbs of Mechanicus constructs hum with unceasing purpose, their servo claws adjusting conduits that channel psychic force into conduits as thick as cathedral pillars. The hall is no temple, yet it is more holy than any shrine. It is no machine, yet its workings are precise, calibrated to the heartbeat. It is both the ritual machine, the place where men and women are unmade in the name of eternity. The prisoners arrive in lines, their chains clattering like muted bells. They are gaunt now, hollow-eyed from the journey, their steps faltering yet guided by the grip of guards who drag them forward. Each is marked already by exhaustion, despair, and the faint stink of madness, yet ceremony transforms them. Ecclesiarchal priests move among them, their robes heavy with gold thread, their hands bearing censers and scrolls of sanctified scripture. They press purity seals, wax stamped with holy sigils, onto the ragged clothing of the condemned. Some are placed across brows, some across hearts, others across lips, as if silence itself must be consecrated. Each is branded in oil and ash, smeared with the mark of the Aquila. Each is reduced not to man or woman or child, but offering. The voices of the priests rise in unison, liturgies echoing in countless tongues. Their chants drown the sobs, drown the whispered pleas. Sound itself becomes a weapon, suffocating the humanity of those marked for death. Ceremony erases individuality. Sacrifice becomes routine, and routine is the most terrible cruelty of all. One boy trembles as he kneels. His skin shines with sweat. In the suffocating air, a priest steps forward, holding a vial of sacred oil. For a moment, the priest's hands falter. The boy's wide, terrified eyes meet his own. And in that glance, the priest sees his own son, left behind on a hive world far across the stars, a son who will never know the fate. His father oversees each day beneath the throne. For the briefest instant, the chant falters in his throat. The vial trembles in his grip, but duty devours hesitation. He anoints the boy's forehead with oil in the shape of the double-headed eagle, and the chant swells around him until it fills every hollow space of conscience. The boy weeps, shoulders shaking, but the oil glistens on his skin like molten gold. The priest does not look back. The machinery engages. Deep beneath the hall, turbines roar to life, their vibration carried up through the floor like the rumble of distant thunder. Great coils of psychically attuned copper glow with blinding light. The air shivers with static charge, making hair stand on end, filling mouths with the taste of iron. Servo skulls flit overhead, their vox emitters croaking fragments of litanies and distorted metallic voices. Cables snake down from the ceiling, like veins, their tips fastening into sockets in the stone floor, awaiting the next stream of power. The prisoners are led into the circle. Chains are fastened to iron rings. Knees press against cold marble. Eyes are forced downward. And the chant becomes deafening. It rises not as prayer, but as fuel. For in this ritual machine, faith is no act of devotion. It is a component, a cog, as necessary as wiring and steel. Among the prisoners, some still resist. One man spits, his voice cracking with defiance, cursing the emperor's name. The sound is torn from his lips as guards strike him down, branding, iron searing his skin until the curse becomes a scream. The crowd of priests does not waver. The chant continues, swelling louder, drowning defiance beneath the tide. The boy, oil fresh upon his brow, whispers his mother's name as the machinery hums. No one hears him but himself. Yet in that whisper, a fragment of humanity clings like a candle against the storm. Every ritual feeds upon such candles, and every candle is meant to be snuffed. The sacrificial halls blaze with light, drowning. In incense, trembling with the vibration of faith bound to steel, the ritual machine is primed. Soon the offering will ignite. There is a silence that precedes every scream. A pause so thin, so fragile, that it feels as though the galaxy itself is holding its breath. In that moment, before the soul is torn from flesh, hope dares to whisper one final lie, the sacrificial. Halls thrummed with power. The machinery had awakened. The chants of the ecclesiarchy rolled like thunder through the chamber, echoing against marble and bone. The air was hot now, thick with incense and sweat. The taste of iron on every tongue. Thepsictors knelt in rows, their chains fastening them to the marble floor, their foreheads glistening with oil and ash. Servo claws descended from the ceiling, attaching iron circlets around their skulls, each circlet engraved with words of containment. Wires as thick as serpents coiled into sockets at the back of their necks. One by one, the prisoners were bound into the ritual machine. Flesh became circuitry. Humanity became fuel. The boy who had been anointed with trembling hands now gasped as the circlet tightened across his brow. His small shoulders convulsed against the restraints. His lips formed prayers, but the chant of the priest swallowed them whole. The chant rose higher. The machinery roared louder. And then, all at once, the ritual began. Light consumed the chamber, dotted poured from the coils of copper, searing white and edged with crimson. It poured from the prisoners' eyes, their mouths, their very skin as psychic essence ignited. Some shrieked as their bodies arched, muscles snapping against restraints. Others convulsed in silence, eyes rolling back until nothing but white remained. The sound was indescribable, not mere screams, but the tearing of thought, the shattering of memory. Voices overlapped, thousands upon thousands, an ocean of cries, all funneled into the same abyss. The smell of burning flesh mingled with the perfume of incense, a grotesque parody of holiness. For some, it came swiftly. their essence unraveled in a single flash, leaving only husk and smoke. For others, it lingered, a prolonged disintegration where every nerve, every memory, every shred of self-awareness was stripped away in agony, and yet, for a few. There was more. One woman, her face gaunt, her eyes hollow from weeks in the black ship's hold, gasped not in pain but in awe. For as her mind collapsed, she glimpsed it, the Emperor's radiance. A presence vast beyond comprehension, a light that burned like the birth of suns. For one infinitesimal instant, she felt cradled, redeemed. Then she was gone to touch eternity. Is no gift. It is erasure disguised as salvation. Among the rows, one man fought against the tide of light and terror. His teeth clenched, blood spilling from his bitten tongue. His body burned, but his mind clung to something small, something absurdly fragile, the smell of bread, fresh bread. He remembered the hive market of his youth, steam rising from cracked loaves pulled from ovens, vendors shouting prices, the warmth of the crust breaking in his hands. He had once stolen a loaf, clutching it to his chest as he ran, laughing through narrow alleys while hunger clawed at his belly in that memory. There was no emperor, no warp, no destiny, only the scent of bread, the sound of laughter, the feeling of being alive. That was his last thought. His final rebellion against the void. The machine tore him apart. The priests did not falter. Their chants grew louder still, drowning the cries of the dying. Their words were fuel, their faith another cog in the endless process. They knew not the names of those they sanctified, nor the memories they extinguished. What mattered was only the outcome. Light poured into the throne. The Astronomican burned brighter, and humanity endured for another day. The boy wept until his tears evaporated to smoke. The woman reached eternity and was unmade. The man smelled bread and was erased. All were equal in the end, fuel for hunger that could never be sated. The light receded. The coils dimmed. The machinery slowed to a hum. The voices fell silent, their owners reduced to charred husks, still bound in their restraints. Ash clung to the air, drifting down like snow across the marble floor. The priests lowered their heads, their chant dwindling into whispers, their voices hoarse but unbroken. The ritual machine had consumed its offering. The Emperor had been fed. And then came the silence. Not peace. Never peace. But the suffocating absence left in the wake of annihilation. The guards began their work, detaching the blackened corpses from chains, dragging them into pits lined with lime and ash. The marble floor, once white, was stained crimson and black. Yet the halls would be cleansed. They always were. For the ritual must be repeated, again and again. And again. This is the cost of survival. An endless pyre, a cycle without end. Humanity endures, but only by consuming itself. The priests raised their censers once more, swinging them over the pits as the corpses tumbled into the darkness. Ash and smoke rose together, the remnants of once living beings sanctified as waste. And as the incense burned, one question lingered in the stale air, unspoken but undeniable. How long can a species survive if its soul is spent day after day upon a throne that never dies? Ashes fall. They always fall. Names vanish. They always vanish. Yet the Astronomican still burns, a light bright enough to blind the stars. And none ask the cost. In the great sacrificial halls. The silence after the ritual is never silent for. Long, servitors trundle forward on iron legs, their hissing pistons echoing against stone. They clear away the remnants of the offering, dragging charred husks into pits that steam with chemicals. 1,000 corpses reduced to waste are erased from the floor in less than an hour, but not every task is mechanical. Some duties require a human hand. An old janitor bends beneath the vaulted ceiling, his broom brushing blackened ash into an urn of bronze. His back aches, his lungs sting from incense smoke, and his robe is patched too many times to count. Yet he whispers the same words with every sweep. Forgive me. Each handful of ash was once a soul. Each fleck of soot had a name. The state records them as numbers, tallies on parchment in the endless halls of the administratum. But this man whispers for them because no one else will dot the Imperium sanctifies slaughter. Humanity forgets it. The Astronomican burns ceaselessly, its psychic flame visible across the galaxy. To the countless worlds of the Imperium, it is a beacon of hope, the only thing that allows ships to sail through the madness of the warp. Farmers on distant agri-worlds look up at night skies and thank the Emperor for its light. Soldiers whisper its name before battle, believing it a shield. None hear the screams that feed it. Across millennia, the number of psykers offered to the throne is beyond reckoning. Entire generations have been erased without leaving a single grave or marker. For each day that humanity has endured, thousands of souls have been torn apart. For each century, millions. For each millennium, billions dot, and still the light demands more. The cycle has become invisible. Not in secrecy, for the black ships are known, their shadow feared, but in normality. It is not hidden horror, but ordinary horror. Like famine on a hive world, like plague in the underhives, it is accepted as the texture of existence. Priests call it mercy. Bureaucrats call it necessity. Citizens call it destiny, but no one calls it cruelty. The janitor's broom scrapes softly against the floor. His whisper, "Forgive me," is swallowed by the vaults above, lost beneath the chants of priests preparing the next liturgy. He once had a son, taken by the black ships decades ago. He never learned whether the boy lived long enough to scream. Perhaps in sweeping these ashes he brushes against what remained of him. Yet he does not ask. Questions are dangerous. To live in the Imperium is to know that curiosity itself is a kind of heresy. So he whispers his small apology, breath after breath, until even the taste of ash feels like prayer dot in a system built on silence. Memory becomes rebellion. The cycle repeats across eternity. The black ships continue their harvest, visiting world after world. Psykers are bound, transported, consumed. The Astronomican shines, and humanity survives another day. Worlds are born, worlds die, and through it all, the pyre burns. The tragedy is not its secrecy, but its scale. The Imperium has industrialized damnation. Death has been mechanized into liturgy, and slaughter has become routine. And in routine, meaning dies dot to the billions who live beneath the Imperium's banners. Sacrifice is an abstraction. On hive worlds, citizens chant prayers of gratitude for the Emperor's light. On forge worlds, adepts calibrate machinery to ensure the beacon burns steady. On shrine worlds, pilgrims light candles for blessings they will never see. They believe in the flame, but not in its fuel. For them, the Astronomican is eternal, shining without question. They do not imagine the boy anointed with oils, weeping into his chains. They do not imagine the man remembering the smell of bread before the void devoured him. They do not imagine the janitor, sweeping ash into urns, whispering apologies into smoke. They do not imagine because the Imperium does not permit imagination. This is the true cruelty, not only the death of the sacrificed, but the death of their memory. Ashes fall. Names vanish. The wheel turns, grinding bones into dust, and the Empire calls it faith. The Astronomican shines. Humanity sails its ships through the storm. The Imperium endures, but endurance is not the same as survival. Endurance is the slow consumption of self, day after day, until nothing remains but ritual and ash dot. The janitor empties his urn into the pit, whispers his prayer, and returns to the endless task. Tomorrow there will be more ash. Tomorrow, the cycle will begin again, and still the question lingers. How long can a species call itself human if its soul is burned? Piece by piece, to feed a god who no longer speaks? There is a silence deeper than death. It is not the silence of the grave, nor of the void between stars. It is the silence of a god who cannot answer, yet still consumes. The Emperor sits upon his golden throne, a corpse sustained by machines. That shriek and bleed oil, tubes pierce desiccated flesh. Mechanisms grind without pause. 1,000 tech priests labor ceaselessly, patching wires, chanting binaric prayers, tending a body that is no longer alive and yet cannot be allowed to die. The Astronomican flares above Terra, a fire without fuel but the endless offering of souls. It burns with unfathomable intensity, brighter than suns, but behind that radiance is only absence. No voice, no warmth, no acknowledgement. The Emperor does not thank. He does not comfort. He does not remember that to die for him is not to be rewarded. It is to be erased. The last words of the sacrificed are never carried beyond their cells. Yet sometimes faint echoes survive, not in records, not in monuments, but in memory. There was once a man, a psyker, bound in chains within the sacrificial dungeons beneath the palace. His skin bore scars from restraints, his eyes, though hollowed, by despair, still searched the darkness for a human face. In the days before his turn, he shared a cell with another psyker who survived. That survivor recalls the moment with a clarity that years cannot wash away. The condemned man leaned close in the stifling dark and whispered, "Remember my name. If nothing else, remember that I was here." But the survivor cannot recall the name now. It has slipped like ash through fingers. All that remains is the memory of the plea, the sound of desperation carried on stale air. The man is gone, consumed utterly, and even his name has dissolved. To be sacrificed is to die twice, once in body, and once in memory. The janitor still sweeps his ashes. The priests still chant. The bureaucrats still tally. The wheel still turns. The Astronomican shines, and ships still sail. The Imperium still lives, feeding on silence. Yet, beneath it all, the truth festers. The Emperor does not, cannot, will not answer. Faith is met not with dialogue, but with absence. Sacrifice yields no return but necessity. And devotion is devoured without trace. Across the Imperium, the paradox spreads like a shadow. On shrine worlds, pilgrims weep at statues of the Emperor kissing cold marble, believing their tears are seen. On hive worlds, preachers thunder that death in service is eternal glory, their voices breaking from the strain. On battlefields, guardsmen clutch tokens of their children, whispering prayers to a god whose ears are deaf. But, in truth, all prayers fall into the same silence. They do not ascend. They do not echo. They are swallowed by the hunger of the throne. This is the cost of faith in a dead God, to speak into silence, and call the silence holy. Still, the Imperium endures because belief is stronger than truth. Humanity clings to ritual even when the ritual is devouring them alive. To doubt would be to unravel, and so they refuse doubt. They choose silence. They choose ash. The survivor of the sacrificial cell walks through life haunted. They remember the sound of chains rattling in the dark, the smell of burning flesh rising through vents, the plea of a man who only wanted to be remembered. And every night, as sleep drags them down, they wonder if memory itself is enough, or if it too will one day fail. The plea becomes a ghost, and the ghost becomes silence. Ashes drift, candles burn. The Astronomican shines. Yet what is this flame, if not a furnace of the forgotten? What is faith, if not the willingness to surrender your very soul, knowing it will never be acknowledged? The Imperium teaches that this is glory, that to vanish is to triumph, that to be consumed is to be eternal. But there is a darker truth, one that no priest dares whisper. This is what it means to die for the Emperor, not to be remembered, not to be honored, but to be consumed. The janitor breathes his apology to ashes. That cannot hear. The survivor dreams of a nameless friend. Across the stars, billions believe in a God who will never answer, and the light burns on. If salvation demands not your life, but your soul, would you still call it faith?